Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, The Happi Canner. My name is Ashley and I'm going to be showing you how to pressure can beef today. Pressure canning is the safest way to can any kind of meat, whether it's beef, chicken, or pork. I'm hoping that you'll be able to learn some things from me. Please leave me a comment, questions. I'll be really happy to get to you as soon as I can. I might even learn something myself, which I always enjoy and I'm open to. And also feel free to send me some recipes. I'm really interested in trying some new flavors too. Now if you're ready, join me because we're gonna start canning. Getting started, I have pre-cut this roast beef. It was a frozen one that I had in my freezer. I let it thaw overnight, so it wasn't completely thawed. It was still partly frozen in the middle, which makes it much easier to cut. I was able to get these perfect, about 1/2 inch square pieces. I'm also going to be adding onions. I add onions, pretty much everything. I think it adds a little extra flavor. I'm also going to be using some garlic. And then for seasoning, I'm going to be using salt, some Montreal steak spice, as well as pepper. Over here, you can see all the tools I'm going to be using. I'm working with Bernardin lids, as well as Bernardin jars. I like them. I haven't had any fails with them as long as I've done the proper steps and haven't overfilled the jars. I've left the proper headspace. All those important necessities for canning, as long as I follow through, I've had no problems. It's usually with like canning pulled pork or something being too greasy that a jar was not able to seal, but that's not on Bernardin. So instead of using this little guy here for taking out the bubbles, I do use it for checking headspace, but I don't really like using it for taking out the bubbles because I find it a little thick, especially when I'm working with meat. If I'm working with soup, not a big deal because it's a liquid, it's easy to just swipe around, but with meat, it's a bit chunkier, a bit harder to work around, so I like using a chopstick. I personally like to use a lot of vinegar while I'm canning. I will fill a bowl of water and then I will also add probably like, I don't know, a tablespoon or so of vinegar. And then I will use that mixture to wipe the rims. It really helps to disinfect as well as cut the grease. As well as I put some in my canner. Of course, you can see here I have not added anything to my Presto canner yet, but I will be adding water as well as about 2 tablespoons, maybe a bit more. Now we are ready to fill some jars. So my pressure canner will hold about, let me think here, about 8 to 9 jars of this quart mason jars. And so I'm going to be filling those. With jars at the ready, we're good to start filling them. Again, for just a plain recipe, I wouldn't normally add onions, but I really enjoy the flavor of onions. So I add it to a bit of everything, or add it to everything, I should say. Here we go. Onions, we're good. And now I'm gonna add my spices. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt. So again, with doing just beef or just chicken, pork, you don't have to add spices. You don't have to add anything at all. You could just go with the meat. But I mean, for myself, I like adding a little bit of spice and then adding some more while I'm cooking it to taste. I don't like to add too much to my canning mixture because while you're canning, quite often the flavors will enhance. So you could add with something that becomes very pungent. That's why they say not to add bay leaf while you're canning, is because that it can actually become very potent and can actually take over your whole dish. If you really want to add bay to your canning, I would say maybe do just like 1/2 leaf. My mom and I have done that with chicken cacciatore and it turned out just great. So that was good news. So in my canning, along with spices, I like to add garlic. Just a little bit. I would say I'm adding maybe like 1/2 teaspoon, probably a clove. I wouldn't want to add too much of this either, even though I could go crazy. I love garlic, but I also like fresh garlic, which is why I'm not adding too much onions, because I will add fresh onions later as well. So far, I will show you what it looks like. Boop, there we go. Spices and onions. Very pretty so far. Next, we're getting into meat. Okay, our beautiful bowl of beef. So to make sure that I get this even, I'm gonna count out 2, 4, 6 pieces each. I'm gonna add them. So for the cut of beef, I just grabbed a roast loin that was in my freezer here. The nice thing about canning is that it really doesn't matter what cut of beef you go for, as long as it's being pressure canned. I mean, it's all gonna end up really tender. Depending on how you flavor it, of course, you're gonna have your different flavors. Here we go, add these. So the nice thing I want to add here is that these jars are not sanitized, because while they're pressure cooking, they are going to get sanitized by the heat there. They are freshly clean. I have freshly washed them with soap and water and rinsed them with hot water, so at least they are freshly clean, but I did not sanitize them. If I was water bath canning, of course, that would be different. With water bath canning, you always want to sanitize. But that's the thing I like about raw packing and pressure canning is, first off, with raw packing, you just take all your cold raw ingredients, pack them into nice clean jars, put it into some clean cold water, and it all just... And then what I like about pressure canning is the fact that it really takes all the extra labor out of having to sanitize and prep things. You literally just put it all together and it does all the work for you, and I really appreciate that. So I have used up all of my beef here. Unfortunately, all my jars are completely full here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take some of the meat out of one and start to fill them up a little bit more. This will happen from time to time, and that is okay, because we just make do and separate it and fill the other jars. And it's good too, because I actually don't like to overfill the jars, because what will happen is while it's pressure canning, a lot of the water actually gets pushed out. Not a lot of it, but some of it. So if it's overpacked, of course, because of the meat expanding, you lose a lot more water, which when it contracts after it's done pressure canning and sitting on the counter, you'll notice that you'll actually have less liquid and the meat has kind of settled more. And so if it's overpacked, what's going to happen is your meat on top is actually going to change color. I've read that it's still good. However, I haven't really tried it myself because of the first time what happened is I also didn't have a proper seal. So you've actually seen a picture of that, I'm sure, on my blog or on Instagram saying my canning fail. It's because I put too much meat in it. I'm really sure, because now what I do is I put less meat and put more liquid, and now I actually haven't had that problem ever since, which is awesome. And I actually like having the extra stock, because what I do is I'll use the stock from the canning in my cooking, whether it's cooking the vegetables or it's adding into like another can of something like mushroom soup to make a meal. I always reuse the stock, or if I can't use it, what I'll do is I will actually just put the lid back on it and I will put the remaining stock in the fridge and I will use it for a later meal. Literally nothing goes to waste, as much as possible. Got the meat in, the spices, onions, here we are. So for me, this is a bit more space than I like. I would typically like to have a few more pieces of meat and keep it like, again, so probably right here, because I do want to leave that bit of headspace for water to move around, escape, the meat to do its thing as for expanding and contracting. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a few carrots. I like carrots cooked with beef because it actually kind of adds a little bit of sweetness, and I even like the carrots. They end up a bit soft, of course, from being pressure canned, but if you add it to some mashed potatoes, or if you like soft carrots, it's really not a big deal. I don't mind. I think it's good either way. Okay, so thankfully I've got some baby carrots. These are super handy because I don't have to do much prep. That one has a little nib on it, so I'm not going to use it just in case because carrots should be peeled, which these are, before canning. Right now I'm just adding 2 to each. I really like to keep things even. Don't know if you're able to tell as I count everything out, but I like consistency. Some people don't mind, they'll just throw everything in, and that's okay too. It's all up to preference. This is just mine. Okay, every dish, every jar almost has a carrot. It's nice too because when you can this, all that nutrient is going to be together in the broth. So it's not just going to be tasty, but it's also going to be nutritious. And here we go. See, that's better. You got our spices, our onions, our beef, and our carrots, and it's up to that bow line there. So it's not too full. And next is water. Here I go with my kettle of water. Now this water is not boiled, it is just room temperature from the tap here. It's just in my kettle because it holds so much at once. Here we go. And so you want to leave an inch of headspace. I've been doing this for so long that I happen to know the headspace for 1 inch is right there. You just want to fill it that much. But I still like to use the tool just in case to be safe because it's better to be safe than sorry. It really does make a difference in your canning. Okay, before we're done with the water, we're going to want to take the bubbles out. And I actually like to take the bubbles out before measuring because quite often when you're taking the bubbles out, things are going to shift and your water level may actually go down. And when it does that, you're going to need more water. So I just use my eye, and if it looks like it needs a little bit more, I add a bit more, and then I'm going to measure it. And the nice thing about chopsticks is it doesn't chip the glass, it doesn't break anything, it's soft along everything, and it gets into everywhere. So as you can see, I like it because it goes all the way around, no chipping, and compared to the actual tool that comes in the kit, it's much easier for getting around the meat and the vegetables at once. Okay, I am ready to measure, and boom, just below, perfect, perfect. Okay, all these are looking good. I just need to add a pinch of water to this one. And that's it. We're good. I'm gonna double check that. Yes, awesome. Now we're ready for lids and rims. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Skipping a step, now we need to wipe the rims. Super important. Okay, so now that I've got my jar here all ready to go with water, carrots, beef, onions, spices, I'm ready to take my paper towel or a soft cloth, dip it in my bowl of water that I have some vinegar in, that way it's disinfecting, and I'm going to wipe all my rims. Oh yeah, see, there we go, we have some spices on there. I'm going to wipe them all down. And it's nice because this is going to help with the seal, and it pretty much guarantees it. I mean, I can't exactly put my name on it, but I would say more times out of not when I can. I mean, if I forget it, I notice. I really recommend using vinegar all the time. Here we go. Okay, and of course wiping the rims. Now that those are clean, we're ready for our Bernardin lids and our rims. Okay everyone, I'm gonna grab my lid here, put it on, and here's the trick. You don't want to do it too tight, you want it finger tight. So that means like it's easy to open. If it's too tight, it's not going to be able to have the vegetables and the meat doing their business, expanding, and all that water is going to get trapped. It could possibly lead to like a broken jar, improper seals. I just know that this is extremely important, that it's not too tight and of course not too loose, because you also want to have the ring on to keep this lid in place. Okay, here we go. So I usually like to hold the center, just make sure I keep it from wiggling around. Here we go. Whoop. Keeping her tight, not too tight. And the next one, almost done here. It's nice. I almost feel like a master ringer when I do this, because sometimes I can do it fast and other times I'm slow. Now that I've got all these jars prepared, I'm going to put them all into the canner. Currently there's no water. The nice thing about raw packing, or the other nice thing about raw packing, is that you actually need less tools. As you notice, I didn't need my funnel. I was able to just put everything in because it wasn't hot, as well as because there's no water and nothing boiling. I don't have to water about boiling water while I'm putting them in either. So now I have that ready. The next step is to add some water. So this water also is not hot. It's also room temperature. Everything is at room temperature. That way it heats together. It prevents jars from breaking. It helps with food safety. That way everything is heating and cooling at the same time. Okay, my one kettle was not enough. I'm gonna have to fill this again. I don't want these to be completely submerged and covered in water. I'm gonna line them up to about just under the rim here. Probably slightly above. Yeah, just above your metal rim is where I would put the water. Okay. There we go. That's what it took, was 2 kettlefuls. Perfect. And now I also like to add vinegar to my pot. And the reason for this is it actually helps to keep the jars clean. Quite often when you can without any vinegar in the water, you'll take them out and the next day realize there's like this white calcium film. That film, the best way to prevent it from happening is actually to use vinegar. It's a miracle worker. It helps to, again, degrease while you're canning. It also is going to help so that your jars come out clean, they look clean. It also makes them much easier to clean afterwards, because once you're done canning, it's really important to actually wipe your jars down. You don't want to leave any food residue on them. So you'll actually take your lids off, you'll wipe them down, which I'll show you, and you'll notice that your jars are much cleaner. And even your pot, much easier to clean when you put vinegar in it. Now we're going to get the magic happening. We're going to turn the pot on to maximum, get this to a rolling boil. Once it's boiling for about 5 minutes, you know that everything's really hot. We're going to go ahead and put this lid on, and we're going to let that vent. Alright, so you can see it's at a rolling boil. It's been doing this for about 5 minutes, so I'm pretty confident that the water within the jar should all be the same, should all be hot. I'm going to go ahead and get ready to put the lid on. Okay, got my Presto lid, squeeze that down. Right away it has steam coming up the top, so you want to be very careful not to get too close, because of course it is pressure, steam, so it is very hot. I'm going to give this about 10 minutes to heat and to steam, and then once that 10 minutes is up, that's when I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take my weight and I'm going to add that on top. Because of where I live, I use a 10-pound weight. Now you'll want to look up where you live compared to where your altitude is to find out what weight you should be using. Now I should note here, because it is winter here in Alberta when I'm canning, the house with all this steam is going to get pretty moist. So what I'm doing is I'm actually turning the fan on. This is going to help to regulate some of this steam coming out, get it out of the house, and try to keep my windows from fogging and freezing. Okay, so for the purpose of this quick part of the video, I just turned off my fan. I don't know if you can see it very well, but there is quite a bit of steam coming out of there. There we go. Very high pressure. You can see there at the very back that my safety valve has lifted, so I know there is quite a lot of pressure in there. This would be the absolute worst time to take off your lid. Okay, so I'm gonna get ready. I'm gonna put my weight on. For safety reasons, I like to actually wear a glove when I'm putting my weight on. I do not like the idea of getting burnt, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. Pop it on nice and safe. It's on there. It's gonna build some pressure, and in about, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how hot each individual stove is, will depend on how quickly this will start to jiggle. It's going to start to jiggle and release steam once the pressure has built up. At that point, that is when you actually start the timing for your timer. Start the timer for your pressure canning. For quart-sized jars with this beef, we're going to do 75 minutes, which is an hour and 15 minutes. And then I'm also going to show you this. Once it actually starts jiggling, what we're going to do is actually we're going to turn down the dial. We can turn it from max down to 8. You don't want to leave it too high because this can actually lead to the food tasting burnt. The water could evaporate really quickly. It's just, I mean, you don't have to, but I have found in my own experience that once this has actually started jiggling and the pressure is right, at that point, when I've set the timer, that's okay to turn down the temperature just a little bit, not too much, because you don't want to lose that pressure you've already built in here, which I have done on accident before. You want to turn it down just a number so that you don't have too much heat. And hopefully that makes sense. If you guys ever have any questions, please leave me a message. Okay, there we go. That's what it looks like when it's jiggling. It's ready. The pressure has built, and it's letting us know that we can go ahead and start our timer for 75 minutes. At this point, like I said, I'm also going to turn down the heat to 8 because I know that it has reached the right pressure. I'm just going to turn down a little bit, not too much, and I'm going to go ahead and set my timer. All right, everyone. While this is doing its business, I just want to correct myself. I'm actually using a 50-pound weight. So the first middle part here with the black and the metal that holds the other 2 weights, that first weight is actually 5 pounds. And then each metal ring is actually another 5 pounds. So because of where I live, I'm actually using 15 pounds. I just definitely want to correct myself on that one. Okay, so it has now been 75 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my stove and let this pot completely cool down. Once it's cool, that's when I will be able to take off the weight. I will show you that, of course, as well. We'll know that we can take off the weight once the safety gauge has gone down. I'll also show you another quick little test. And then we are good to go to actually open the canner and pull out our jars. There we go. Turn that off. And we're going to let that come completely down to a cool. And it should take about 45 minutes to an hour. I will usually actually pick up the pot and move it to the other element. That way it's not sitting on the heat. And that will also help with the cool down process. So yeah, about 45 minutes to an hour. It's been 45 minutes to an hour. There's no more steam coming out, as well as at the very back there, you can see that the safety mechanism is down. So that's one way to tell you that the pressure has gone down, that it's almost, or that it is safe to open. Other thing I like to do is just kind of give it a quick little boop boop. We're good. At this point, I'm pretty confident. I'll just take it off. There we go. Just let that vent for a couple more minutes before I actually remove the lid. Just helps any extra steam that's built up to leave the pot so that we don't have any too much cold air going into the canner, because that can lead to jars breaking as well as cracking, and we don't want that. We just worked hard. And as we can see here, I do have a clean towel ready to go, as well as my tongs. I'm going to use those to take the jars out of the canner, which is one of my favorite parts because I love watching the bubbles in the jar. That's one way to know that you have done a very good job. If you don't have a rapid amount of bubbles or no bubbles at all, really, that's kind of a warning sign that there wasn't enough pressure and that you might need to redo the whole canning process again, as far as putting everything to the canner and doing your 75 minutes again. Once we get this lid off, my other favorite thing besides the bubbles is definitely the lids popping. Love that sound. It is definitely a sure sign that you have done a good job. Okay, so we're gonna take the lid off. Now it's super important at this point that when we take it off, that we take off the lid and face it the opposite way towards us, because that steam is gonna come out in a big puff of cloud. And if you have it the lid facing towards you, you're going to direct that steam towards yourself. So it's really important that we have it facing the other way. We unlock it. That's the third way of knowing that it's ready, because if it did not have enough relief from the pressure, the safety mechanisms inside would be engaged and we would not be able to open the canner. There we go. Whew. Steam it. Just show you quick. There we go. There's the jars in the canner. I can actually see from the lids that looks like one of them has already sealed, which is great news. Let's pull them out and see how they're doing. There we go. You see it bubbling. Oh yeah, see, we did a good job. It is bubbling like crazy. Anytime we should hear some pops, those jars sealing. Honestly, I think these look gorgeous. You can really smell the beef, which I enjoy. Okay, there we go. And there we go. Oh, you hear it? The first one. Okay, let's view it. Okay, there's all of our jars. You can see that they are boiling quite vigorously, which is exactly what we want. If they were not bubbling, that would tell us, again, that there was not enough pressure built up in the pressure canner and that we need to redo the process again. And there we are, folks. You have just pressure canned your first round of beef with carrots. Congratulations. You should all feel very proud. So super important that we leave these for 24 hours. We're gonna wanna let these sit for 24 hours because you want them to cool completely. Once that is done, oh, you can hear the popping. I love that sound. After 24 hours, we'll be able to wipe them down. We'll take off the rims. You'll want to wipe them down, get off any extra food so that they don't sit there and mold and stuff like that. Once you've cleaned and dried your jars, you can then label them and store them. Some people like to store their jars with lids on, or rims on, sorry. However, I do not anymore. I did learn from other canners that one of the reasons why we don't like to put lids on, or sorry, why we don't keep rims on, is because then it's hard to tell if you have a good seal later on, because sometimes during storage the lids will unseal. And the best way to tell is if the lids just pop off, and if the rim is on, you can't tell as well. Proper storage in a cool, dark, dry place. These should last over a year, 2 to 5. However, they can last even longer. Just always look at your food before opening them. I always check the sides, as well as sniff it. Even though you can't detect everything, if something is rotten, you will definitely be able to tell right away regardless. Leave me a comment, a message, or any questions if you would like to know more. And keep an eye out for my next video. All right, before we end the video, it is next day, and I just wanted to show everybody what the end result of our canning was yesterday. As you can see, everything has turned out perfect. The water level is right. The meat isn't too high, so it's not going to discolor or anything. And I'm really happy with the results. Even with the color and stuff like that, that's going to make a really great broth. It's a little darker because of the carrots. I'm really excited to try this. I hope that you are all going to be just as happy with your end results. I know you can do it, especially if you follow the basic safety guidelines. I know you can. All right, enjoy. Any comments or questions, please leave me a message. And finally, before I let you go, the jar is all nice and clean. So pretty. See everything very nice. Spices there at the top. Looking good.